2020 Lake Mills Public Works Board meeting to order. Misty, can you take the roll, please?
Ms. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Temperley?
Here.
Mr. Picard?
Here.
And Mr. Lair previously informed staff that he'd be unavailable this evening.
All right. Up next, we have the correction and approval of the minutes of February 11th, 2020. All right, and a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any changes? All right, Misty, you can do the roll call then.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Picard?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
Item 4, questions and public comment.
He's with us.
Oh, all right. All right, we're going to number 5, Director of Public Works report.
Okay, thank you. I've only got 3 items on the list, but there are 3 big items. First of all is the DNR Water Sanitary Survey. This is the word sanitary is a little bit misleading. It's purely about the water system. It's something the DNR does once every 3 years to every water system. And really, they go through the system very closely, very carefully. And then they come up with recommendations for things that we can do better or deficiencies, et cetera. I think you've all probably been through this process before. On the downside, if you will, they did point out a few issues that we are going to have to take care of. In fact, we started taking care of them. One of them is our cross-connection inspections. And we're doing a good job with the residential cross-connection inspections, but the commercial and industrial ones we have to do better. We, of the approximately 200 or so accounts under this heading, we were able to get inspection reports back from all but about 12. But in the DNR's eyes, that's 12 short, and so we've got to do better. So we've already put a process in place and are sending out letters probably yet this week requesting that these be done much earlier in the year. In the past, we've had an issue with different inspectors have different forms that they use, and so there was some confusion as to which form they were supposed to use, et cetera. So we actually created our own. And basically, all the form does is requires them to sign it, saying that, yes, they have completed their cross-connection inspection, and they've either passed or not passed, and they're fixing their deficiencies. So
What exactly is a cross-connection?
Okay, I'm sorry. A cross-connection is any place where potable water can come in contact, potentially come in contact with any kind of gray or black water. The classic example is a hose outside. That has potable water coming out of it, but if you leave it on the lawn or in a mud puddle or something like that, there's a potential for the water that it's sitting in to work its way back into the system. Water softeners are also an example of where this can happen. And so there has to be some sort of either a check valve or a visible separation between the potable water and any other water supply. So that's basically what it is. So we're going to get on that pretty hard and make sure we get all of those in this year so we satisfy the DNR in that regard. The other,
Let me make one comment there. That means that we will be following up with the attorney letters threatening to shut them off. So, because if
You
they don't.
determine who has it, because Paul mentioned the water
Well,
softener.
they have an inspection.
Okay,
Now, the residentials we do.
all right.
So we make the determination, but commercials and industrials are done by a plumber, and he signs off on the form. And his signature is saying, yes, they comply.
Okay.
And if they don't, then he's saying why we will, what we'll do to get them in compliance. Some of them just blow it off as an expense they don't want to have to take care of. Well, the DNR has informed us that will not happen again this year.
Okay.
Can we put something on the city website so that the residential homeowner can know what the gadget is that you have to buy to put on your outside faucet? I'm assuming there is such a gadget.
yes.
And then maybe explain it to them so that while they're getting ready for the season, they know to go get one of those things.
Absolutely, we can do that.
And I'm assuming if you have a professionally installed water softener, they would do it the right way. I'm assuming.
Correct, well, that's an assumption, yeah, but that's why we check it. And
Yeah.
the residential ones have to be done once every 10 years. We're doing it as part of our meter change-out program, but We assume that it goes in right. We don't know if it stays that way necessarily, so.
That funny piping that goes everywhere and attaches to the faucet is probably what it is with my water softener.
That's correct.
Generally, they have some kind of hose that runs down to a drain on the floor, and that's where it's going to occur. Something gets sucked back up off the floor and back into your water softener. So there's some kind of method in that system that provides an air brake so that it can't draw it back up.
Okay.
We have pamphlets that the guys hand out that explains all that. And so we will put something on the website, the TV channel, all that stuff. Yeah, happy to.
Thank you.
The other issue that came up, and this was, I don't know if this is necessarily a deficiency or anything, but security of our water facilities is going to become a bigger and bigger issue. Right now, we are set up in such a way that you couldn't get into the building easily, but you may be able to. And so what's going to come down the road here, we're sure, is that there will be fencing required around all the water facilities, the tower, the reservoirs, et cetera, and possibly cameras, that sort of thing. Right now, we're set up so that anyone that enters any one of our facilities, an alarm goes off. The guys know how to disarm that before they go in, but that, we were told, is not going to be adequate. Probably within a very few years. We'll have to get a little more strict about that. Now, I want to go to the other side of the issue, and that is, as you know, over the past 3 years, and Vicki was part of this deal, is we got slapped around pretty good by the DNR for several years. We had some consent orders that we had to follow, et cetera, et cetera. And so I am really happy to report that we're almost done with all of the consent orders that have been put in place. And what we were told is we're done. It's just a matter of when they actually expire. And that the DNR is very pleased with the turnaround that they've seen in Lake Mills over the last couple of years. The deficiencies that we've addressed, the lead service line issues, the reporting issues that we had, et cetera, et cetera. And in fact, I'm glad Brian's here because they singled out our survey of lead service lines throughout the city as really kind of the example that they're using now to other communities that should be doing this very same thing, and that indeed every city should start with some sort of an inventory, and they're using us as an example of how to do that. So in place of the old past where we would really get beat up at these sanitary surveys, it was actually a very positive meeting. And we're really pleased that things are going the direction they are. And I also I want to mention Harold Dunkelberger and Brad Hosey and Dylan Lucas, who have been doing a heck of a job getting this thing back where it's got to be and making sure that we're complying with everything. And understand that doesn't come free, and so there is a price that has to be paid for that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I can assure you, and I can assure our customers, that our system is in really good shape right now. At least not our underground infrastructure, but our above-ground facilities are in very good shape, and we're passing our tests very well, and things are going really, really positive direction. So I wanted to make sure.
And the calendar works so that all our reports are going in on time.
And actually, we're almost done with all those reports, so the calendar's going away as soon as I can.
Good.
Any questions on that one? I'll move on otherwise.
When is the well rehabilitation going
The
to?
radium?
Oh, good question. This week. They're starting work on it this week. We anticipate it will be done by the end of the month. And again, just as a refresher, what we're doing is filling the lower 200 feet of the reservoir, or the well at Reservoir 4. And what we've been told is that once that's done, of course, we'll monitor the radium there very closely, but we're hoping that solves the problem at that. In fact, our latest tests, we're below the MCL at that well anyway, so we're doing well, yeah. So by the end of the month, it should be done, Mark.
Yeah, the issue is once you're over, you're over. So one test.
Is it one test or is it over or more than one?
It's a running
Right,
average of 12 months.
right.
So a high test will set you off for 12 months. A low test will set you in good shape for,
But you have to have more than one high test, right?
well, it's the average of the most recent 12 months. We test quarterly, so it'd be the most recent 4 tests.
So one test could set you over.
And do you have to react to one test?
No.
As in,
If it gives you the average, then yes.
Well,
yeah, well, if it affects the average, that's obviously more than one.
yeah.
The average includes more than one.
Yeah.
Right, there are 4 tests, and
Okay, got it.
3 of them can be under, but the 4th one is over high enough that it pulls the other ones into the average you're on.
If we go over 5 microcurries per liter, looking at Dwayne to help me with the words, on an average, that alerts the DNR. If we stay under that, we're good. So as of right now, our last 4 tests put us under, or actually we're at 4.63. So we'll take that.
But because we were over that one time, we still have to.
Anything else? Okay, next topic then, real quick, is late in February, we had a sewage leak. Oh, and probably one of the worst places we could have it, right at the on-ramp from Highway 89, or at Highway 89 and the interstate. And I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version here, because it was a lengthy process. But ultimately, what we found is that it appears that a contractor was installing a new gas line to Quick Trip from the east side of the on-ramp to the west side to Quick Trip. Of 89, I'm sorry, of 89. And in doing so, they just hit the top of the sewer line that goes through there. Just enough to break it open. And over time, what happened is that, understand that the sewer lines are bedded in gravel. And so when the hole opened up in the sewer line, gravel went in, and it went basically down to the intersection of V and 89. And there's a pipe there, a manhole there, that takes a 90-degree angle down into the manhole. And after a short time, the gravel blocked that pipe.
And let's back up. It's not a sewer line, it's a force main.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
And that force main only pumps every so often. So the reporting of it was hilarious because the county plows that area. And they drove by and said there was a water leak. And then when someone went out and inspected it again, there was no water leak. And then the next guy drove by and said, hold it, there's a water leak there. And then they said, well, they said that the last time and there wasn't. And the guy turned around, came back and said, oh, it's gone. But then Brian called us and we figured out it was a force main. And so, force mains only pump every so often, but as it pumped, it started, because it was 3 months after after they bored that this actually showed up. And so it was a little bit of a mystery to all of us for a while.
Right, and so there was pressure there too, and that forced it to the surface. Not a pretty sight. So when we went out there initially, we realized that the leak was to the north of the intersection a little bit, dug it up, fixed it, and once it was fixed, we saw another surge to the south, and then realized what was going on when we dug that one up. The pipe was full of gravel, and the sewage was not going where it was supposed to go. And so, 2 things. One is, of course, because of the way we believe this was damaged, we have contacted the contractor, and we are going to be negotiating some damages to that, having them pay for it. And the second thing is, because that intersection is so busy and very unpredictable, we had a lot of cost in employees being there to manage traffic. So we had members of the police department, wastewater, of course, water, electric, moving traffic through that intersection. I don't know if you had the chance to go through there. We ended up actually moving traffic from the off-ramp to the on-ramp. And so what that meant is a lot of coordination at the top of the ramp. Yeah, State Patrol was there too. A lot of coordination so that we didn't have cars bumping into each other and all that good stuff. It took us, on the Thursday that we started to fix it, it took us about 5 or 6 hours to take care of that damage. The next day when we repaired the damage we found farther south, that was about 2 or 3 hours worth of work. But it's one thing when water leaks, it's another thing entirely when sewage leaks. It's not a pleasant deal. I mentioned that because we really came together quite quickly, got the departments together, got our safety process put together, and it actually worked pretty slick. Yeah. If I didn't mention the street department, I apologize, but they were very much involved with that, too. So we hope we don't have that again, but we did, and I think we learned from it.
Did DNR do anything to us because of it?
And we don't know yet for sure. We reported it immediately, and we told them what our setup was for dealing with it. I believe they did have a rep come by and look at it and thought that what we had done was according to the book. It was the best we could do in the situation. And we don't anticipate any fines. We do anticipate when we put our annual report together that our CMAR, there'll be some notice of that. But we don't anticipate anything else than a notice that this happened.
Good.
Last thing that I want to touch on, this is more of a generic or a general topic, and that is the street department vehicle replacement. We recently replaced a large dump truck and a one-ton pickup. And that in itself is not so exciting, but I guess what is exciting is that we are in a process now where we have put together this annual vehicle replacement schedule, and we're able to stick to it quite well. This really kind of stemmed from an incident we had several years ago where a truck just died on us and we weren't really ready to replace it, and so we had some extraordinary costs to do that. And by putting the vehicle replacement schedule together won't eliminate that, but it made us take a look at the quality of our vehicles and the life of the vehicles, et cetera. And the other thing it did is really start making us look at where we can get the best deals. And I don't know if you're aware, but the state of Wisconsin has got an overall bidding project where we can purchase vehicles at the same price they do, and so we generally will look at that very closely. But one of our employees, also James, has now gotten into the mode where he knows what trucks we're looking to replace in a particular year, and he goes out looking for these trucks. And a great example this year is that we needed, like I said, a large dump truck, and we had budgeted $195,000 total for the dump truck and the one-ton pickup truck. James goes out doing his search thing and found a 2020 large dump truck, ready to go, white, whole ball of wax. Basically, it was a truck that had been reclaimed as part of a bankruptcy. And when all was said and done, we were able to get the two trucks for $10,000 below what we had budgeted. That's using the state bid and the fact that James has really been diligent in finding good deals. So 2 points. One is this vehicle replacement schedule is working. Our fleet is in very good shape. We still got a few things that we got to replace, but as we doing it methodically is good. And secondly, it's giving us the opportunity to really look for the best deal, buying the best trucks we can at the lowest cost, and really being conscious of taxpayers' dollars in this regard. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Any questions?
Have
Got something?
all of you met Brian?
He looks familiar, so I don't know.
Okay, well, let me introduce Brian. Brian, as I mentioned earlier, was the gentleman that did our lead service line inspections, so he was the inspector.
If you want to go to the podium, that
Go to
way
the
they
podium
can put
and
it on
everybody
camera.
can see you.
I think he might have inspected my house.
Could, probably.
Probably.
Well, he was probably
so.
the dang near every house in the city and did just a heck of a job with that.
He's also the Main Street liaison.
So he did a very good job with that. And now Brian is working toward being our NSO, Neighborhood Services Officer. And it comes with a variety of duties. Most of it is still being quite a liaison between the residents and us and that sort of thing. He's also, paying attention to building code violations, zoning issues, all kinds of things that kind of slip past us because we don't have time to go out and do many of those things, so.
It's an enforcement position.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, doing a very
We
good
can
job.
focus on more violent crime or burglaries.
This one's to kind of clean up some of the code stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that's kind of a pain. Like
Right.
vision triangle stuff and garbage cans in the street
cars
all that
parked on
kind of stuff.
sidewalks.
Yeah, people parking on the street during snow, during the winter months, during the snow time, from, what is it, midnight to 5.
Right.
So he kind of concentrates on those. So if you're watching the city council meetings now, there's an ordinance there called the NSO
I
ordinance.
saw that in the website,
He's the NSO.
yeah.
General nuisance violations.
Stands for not so ornery.
Yeah,
That's right.
So, that's Brian.
Great.
good.
Good to meet everybody.
Yeah.
Hi, Vicki.
Hi.
All right, that's it for the report. Item 6, discussion on water rate case. No recommendation because somebody decided for us, I see, according to the paper.
Well, yeah, this, the water rate case is a little different than the sewer rate case.
Okay.
I think we, at a earlier meeting, presented our report to the Public Service Commission.
Right,
And so what we have now is their response to us. So just really quick background here, when we submitted our report, which was back in July of last year, we were estimating or requesting an 8% increase. And after lengthy review and lots of questions back and forth, the PSC is recommending approximately, or just a little over a 17% rate increase. Now, I did put information in here as to how that breaks down per rate class. And, the logic, I guess, or the response is that we've got some pretty heavy expenses that we've got to cover. Of course, all of the work that we did on South Main Street, replacing that, the works, although on Mulberry it was less, but some of the work we did on Mulberry, and then, of course, the lead service line program. And I just want to point out something important about the lead service line program. There apparently is some miscommunication, misunderstanding about the grant money that we got from the DNR. The only comment that has been listed on the Public Service Commission website now in opposition to the rate case, the individual is upset that we had all this grant money and that should not have cost the utility anything. And so the miscommunication is that grant money, of course, went to the residents to replace their portion of the line. And because we're required by the DNR to replace our portion of the line at the same time, we also incurred costs. It just so happens that our cost is a little higher because we got to dig up the street and all that kind of good stuff. So I understand the individual's point of view, but we still do have some pretty heavy costs for what we had to replace with the lead service line replacement program.
Right. You have, the homeowner incurred about $3,000 to $4,000. We incurred $5,000 to $6,000. And theirs was partially paid for by a grant, not 100%, but a nice share. Ours was 100% city cost or water utility cost. So if we had $300,000, you can figure that we had pretty close to $600,000 of expenses for the utility that were not covered by a grant. Also on South Main Street, very similar situation. Some people thought we got grant money for that. We did for the pavement. We didn't for the water and sewer. The water and sewer utilities had to pay 100% of their costs. And so there was a lot of expense there. There was over, almost 2 miles worth of water and sewer replacement. So you get a pretty good idea that's expensive.
I'm pretty sure we covered that thoroughly. We could have used that grant money for the utility, but we decided to,
No, not the 300,000 we couldn't have.
oh, we couldn't have.
No, that was exclusively for the residents.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, there are a couple of programs that are coming forward, one through the Public Service Commission, where they would allow us to capture that in some of our rates. And there's another one, and I cannot remember, it's coming through the Clean Water Act, basically, may allow us to use some money for utility
For
replacement.
utility,
But
okay.
that won't be till next year at the earliest, more than likely 22.
There were a lot of funny things in there. We had to hire Brian through the city because he was inspecting private property, so it wasn't a part of the utility. So he wasn't allowed to work for the utility. He had to work for the city under the general fund. So,
I don't understand, I mean,
The
he wouldn't
utility
let the
could,
utility hire him to
the
enforce?
utility could not fund that work and recover in the rates. So Brian had to be hired by the city to do the work, so that it came out of the general fund as opposed to the ratepayer fund.
Okay,
yeah, some of the oddest things.
we can have special charges, I mean.
We can have special charges if we went that route for the private property improvements.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying, though, the city council and some of the staff salary gets some
Oh.
money.
Now I see where you're going.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was an option, I believe, either 5 or 10% of that money could be used.
yeah,
We
Administrative.
opted not to use that, though. We opted to put it all to the citizens.
general fund.
Well, to the replacement for the citizens.
The $300,000 grant we got, we could have used some administrative costs out of there. We used it 100% to get as many lead services replaced as possible.
Okay.
And then we funded his position. His position technically was not considered part of that 10% anyway, so it was the oddest thing.
All right, so back to the rate case, then I gave you a number of documents there just to use as comparisons and illustrations and all that good stuff. Understand that the notice that went out with the bills last month, that's required by the PSC. We can't mess with that too much. We did put a news release in the paper that kind of explained things a little bit more. But, so then what you have in front of you, number one is just the comparison, new to old rates. And then I wanted to show you where we sit in Jefferson County as far as our cost and rates. And when you look at that sheet, we are the third highest. That's with the rate increase. That's not prior to it. And then just to note that we know Whitewater has applied for about almost a 20% increase in their rates, so they may move up the list a little bit. And then I also wanted to give you a statewide comparison of where Lake Mills is with all water utilities in the state. And I think we're in the 75th percentile or something like that. So, our rates comparatively are a little high, admittedly. I think, though, that it's based on work that we have done, advances that we have made, and I'm talking about even the stuff with the DNR. And so my hope is, and we'll see how this one all plays out, my hope is that we can set tight for a little bit. Maybe at the minimum, there's you can do a much simpler rate case where you're asking for 3% or less. We may look at that in a year or so, just so we do our best to keep up and not have double-digit percentage increases. But I believe this is a realistic raise that we need to pay for what we've done and where we're going.
The question is always asked to me, what's going on, and you can't actually ask for a rate increase until you've incorporated something into until you've incurred the cost by the utility. So when we look at projects like West Lake Street, and I think Dwayne, Oak, Fremont, College, right down the list, some of these water mains are 100 or more years old. And so we're going to have to replace those water mains because when we replace the street, they're old enough. You don't want to put the pavement over the top of something, a piece of infrastructure that old. So while we're looking at that, this is the debate as to how do you control that cost. In the private sector, you would say we're eating a lump. And we're going to have some high costs for a while. We're going to start to probably in 15 or 20 years, you'll start to see us drop to the bottom of the list again. But right now, we're taking that lump where we've had to make a lot of improvements, and then on top of it, we've had a lot of regulatory issues come up. So it's been a cost, well, we planned some costs we didn't plan for.
And then I'll remind you that the public hearing on this is the 19th at 10 o'clock, and that'll be in this room. It's done telephonically, but we'll be in this room, and anyone who may comment can do so, or they can certainly access the PSC website and make comment there.
Any more questions or comments? Okay,
My only comment is I would have had a lot more comments if you weren't, if you didn't say the things you did here.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I still hope people speak their mind. It's important.
all right, on to item 7, discussion recommendation on 2020 street and sidewalk maintenance program. I think this is the first time I've seen a specific address for sidewalk replacement, rather than just a general area.
So it still is a general area, and if you want to start with the sidewalk, we can.
Yeah, but I saw you had some addresses on there, right?
So the list that I provided in your packet is the current list. In fact, it's actually has number 23 on it that occurred since the list was put into the packet. This shows our current list of complaints. We'll continue to get complaints throughout the year. And what we have always done in the past is we kept this list, we reviewed it, we put a package together based on the budget. Again, this year, I think in this budget, we're looking at $15,000 in the, one second,
Now, you're not talking about the map, right?
not yet. We jumped into the sidewalk. So in the sidewalk budget this year, there is $15,000 in the 2020 Special Assessment Fund for maintenance of sidewalks. This current list, or current list of complaints and/or items that were on the list as of the fall of last year, when, if you recall, the snow hit a little earlier than normal. This is a continuation of that list and any new complaints that have happened up to date this year, plus one more that's out there. This current list, if all of them are done, will probably leave us in the ballpark of $1,000 to $3,000 left in the budget. And we have yet to receive the normal spring phone calls on sidewalk complaints. So as you know, the snow is disappearing. Daylight savings time occurred last week. There's going to be more people that are getting out. This list will likely grow in the coming weeks. There are some things in this list.
It grew on South Main Street.
And it grew on South Main Street, although those are covered under the maintenance and the punch list of the Main Street.
Complaints?
Pardon?
A lot of shifting concrete sidewalks,
Oh, really?
trip hazards.
The DOT has been out, is reviewing those. They do have those and are providing that information to the South Main Street contractor for repairs under the contract. These are outside of that project. These are throughout the city. Again, there is a couple placeholders in this list that are rather large that, in fact, we've actually repaired some of the trip hazards that we saw in those areas last year, the severe ones. While noting that, we noted that there's probably some additional sidewalk that could be replaced in those areas, but a severe trip hazard would probably address before replacing some of those larger areas. We'll continue to keep this list up. We'll probably provide it back to you again when the bids are provided to you for recommendation to the council for award. At this point, we're looking, if we stay on this schedule, after tonight, we are looking to possibly open bids April 9th, which means we would come back to your April meeting with possibly some bid amounts for this work that we're discussing under this item.
Are small trip hazards addressed by grinding by the city?
There are, so smaller trip hazards can be addressed by grinding. Some of the large,
Pack it with coal patch.
some of them are by cold patch. Some of them are, in the short term, will be painted to bring that to everyone's attention that there is something there and we are aware of it. If there are dollars left after this list or after the list continues throughout the year, then we will go back to using our counterclockwise rotation. I think we're still in that general northwest area, north of Lake Street, west of Ferry Drive area of the city, and we're moving counterclockwise, so we would move into the southwest portion of the city. But given the list as it is, and given the normal accumulation that we will receive in the next 3 to 4 months, I don't anticipate that there will be excess dollars available at this time.
You mentioned this is out of the special assessment fund, which we haven't done special assessments for years.
We still have a special assessment fund.
How does it get?
Well, what
Funded,
happens
'cause-
is people that have special assessments have been paying.
Oh,
That money goes into that account. And actually, last year, we special assessed all the improvements in Brookstone.
okay. Yeah, we talked about this.
So
It
there's,
doesn't come to us unless they complain that they don't want to pay a special assessment, right? Then it becomes a public hearing.
yes, there, in that case, it was a single property owner.
Uh-huh.
And actually, it doesn't have to be a single property owner, but if they waive their right to a public hearing, you don't have to hold a public hearing.
Right. 'Cause we used to have public hearings all the time.
On all the sidewalk projects,
Yeah,
yeah, because they didn't want to
Yeah.
waive their right to a public hearing.
right.
In this case, they signed a document right up front that said,
Right.
we're waiving our.
For the most part, we haven't been putting sidewalks in where sidewalks
Yeah.
haven't existed as much as we had longer ago.
Right.
The policy changed to doing it
For new streets.
with a street project. And the last couple street projects haven't needed it, because like Mulberry already had sidewalks, so the policy was we replaced it. In that case, we got a grant to replace them, at least the majority of it. And same on South Main Street. So, and like West Lake Street, that's all got sidewalk on it, so we're not gonna special assess there.
What's the plan for East Tyranina Park Road by, I want to see, is that Fayetteville Park there?
Fayetteville Park. We've requested a grant to pay for that, so it'd be similar to South Main or Mulberry, and that we're getting federal money, so we do not special assess in those cases. If there are costs over and above, we may look at special assessing it, but we haven't discussed that yet.
And why do we think we can get a grant? This is new for me.
We applied about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, for the grant. They have a special project grant for those types of sidewalk projects. And they called us and said, we'd like you to submit again. And so we were like, okay. And they said, you got 2 weeks. So we spent a Friday afternoon figuring out what the possibilities were, put them on paper and sent them in.
So I don't, there was going to be a sidewalk through Fayetteville Park, and now I believe the plan is along the road. Is that correct or incorrect?
You're really talking two different types of issues, but the one was that Rob wanted one that went through his park to access the facilities within the park. The council looked at it and said, well, let's put the sidewalk on the road first. And so we were working on that. We actually have that project plan set up, and that's part of what we used to submit the grant.
In addition to some things in the park?
No, we didn't do anything for that. That wasn't covered by this grant. If we were doing something in the park, it would come out of the parks fund.
So there's money, grant money for a sidewalk along a road?
Yes,
Oh,
there is. Just like bike trails, there's sidewalks. And we have applied for them in the past. We generally don't do very well because we don't do the load of mod, but apparently this year there wasn't a lot of, the MLS program probably sucked up a lot of cities that might have done that type of stuff, which was the extra 75 million that they put into the budget, and you could apply for special projects. So, you know, we were kind of surprised. They called us and said, hey, apply. And we're like, okay, I mean, we put in for that stretch. We put in for out by Lake Mills Market. We put in from the end of where 89's project is ending out to St. Paul's. And we did on the north side of Tyranina Park Road, from where it ends there at Planar, to past Badger Chevrolet. And then Marguerite. Yes, Marguerite, from Ferry out to Madison. Not down the hill. A couple years ago, maybe you guys remember, we did Marguerite from Ferry down to Griffith. And I don't know, you remember Mr. Records? He used to be on the Public Works Board for years.
What's his first name?
yeah.
You remember, Vicky? I remember his last name was Records, because that was easy to remember. He had a garage down at the bottom of the hill that was in the right-of-way, which is still there. And so we passed on doing that side of the street at that time because we couldn't get over it and we couldn't get through it. So it was a situation where we picked and selected, but this is on the other side now. This is in the other direction, I should say. But we picked several areas that we thought needed sidewalks that had primary needs. So like going to the market, getting down to St. Paul's, getting out to the Fayetteville Park, and the commercial area along Tyranina Park Road.
When do you expect to hear back on the status?
Sometime in May.
And then would that be this year then?
Yes. Would the construction be this year? I don't know. The grant would give us probably 2 years. So we, a lot of that we already have in some form of design somewhere. So I don't know that it would be that difficult to get it done this year, other than that bidding this late in the year on a project like that isn't always in your best interest.
But the grant would definitely have requirements of that bid. So it would be a separate bid from the bid that is this maintenance project.
Yes, yes.
Any other questions on sidewalks?
No?
All right, we'll move on to street maintenance. And this is a continuation of the street maintenance we've been doing for a number of years. That started when we did our Public Works Board work sessions and worked through our maintenance program. The first sheet that I'll show you is the 2020 chip seal program. This program and this list on this page are current streets that are rated between 5 and 8. They're in relatively good condition. A 10, on the rating scale, a 10 is a brand-new street. A 1 is basically a street that's turning into gravel. This current list of chip seal streets are the only streets that are rated 5 through 8 and have not had work done in the last 7 years. So as you can see, and Steve's got the map up. In general, the green on the map is areas in the Cass, Gladstone, Plainview Terrace, Stony Road, Rooster Drive, and a portion of Owen Street. That general neighborhood would have the chip seal done this year, at least as proposed. These streets were constructed in the anywhere from 2009 to 2013. Their general ratings are 5s through 8s again. Estimated cost based on previous work in the last number of years on chip seal, we're estimating between $20,000 and $25,000 to do that portion of the chip seal program. Again, the overall maintenance budget is currently $500,000, is what we're talking about tonight for 2020. This $20,000 to $25,000 estimate for chip seal typically falls in the realm of a project that we would have, that we would work jointly with the county to do this smaller project of chip seal. You'll note that there's other possible candidates list. Those are the remaining streets that fall under this category of 5 to 8 and have not had construction or maintenance in the last 7 years. You'll note that many of those are downtown, Madison Street, East Lake Street, around the downtown park. We have chosen at this point, because of some of the TID development that's going to be discussed later this month, to at this time hold this work off at least one more year to get a better picture of what may happen in the downtown area as part of TID 8. So unless there's some other discussions on those other streets, the lower part of that spreadsheet, we're looking to just hold one more year on the chip seal program.
Plus the detour.
Plus the fact that the detour will be, however,
This would mess up the detour. right?
yes and no. However, our chip seal program, typically, the chip seal occurs like in August. So
Oh, okay.
Let's back up. What detour are you talking about?
Well, with Madison, people have to go on Madison Street out towards, when you restart South Main.
Well, let's be clear. The detour is 94 to 26 to
right.
18. They have opted not to provide any local access
Yeah.
routes this year.
Right.
So basically what you're doing is you're looking for your best way through the community.
Right.
We can, I think, the Main Street program in conjunction with the chamber will probably put up some signage. A lot of it, obviously, is going to be detoured through either the town of Astelin or the town of Lake Mills.
Yeah.
So some of that signage just doesn't even have anything to do with us. So when we say detour, we have to be very careful because you're going to get the
You're
DOT
right.
guys all fired
Yeah,
up.
no, yeah, I remember that, yep. The official detour is to go out the interstate.
Yeah.
Because nobody knows about the township roads, so.
any further questions on the proposed chip seal plan? If
I can tell you, Todd, that there's a wayfinding app that actually will take you on the bike trail over and across from Sandy Beach, over the bike trail into Topol's Trailer Park.
I did see a truck go down in the bike path last summer,
This one would go up and over, but that's not legal.
yeah,
And I don't know where they got that suggestion from, but
yeah. The truck had to stop at the bridge, you realize.
this leads us into,
Well, I think, we have a prepared motion.
We're mill and overlay next.
Oh, mill and overlay, yeah, okay.
now we're going to lead into the difficult portion of the maintenance program. So the last spreadsheet that we provided you shows streets that are less than 5, so 1 through 4, some of the worst streets in the city.
Is this all the worst streets?
These are all of the 1s through 4 left in the city at this time. The top portion of the spreadsheet, and Steve mentioned it earlier, and this is, I didn't jump in earlier when Steve was talking about water main age, but if you know in the spreadsheet, there is a column that shows water main decade and year, kind of gives you an idea of how old some of these streets are. The top portion of the spreadsheet is based on our 2019 capital improvement plan. I believe it was in about August or September. We reviewed that with you. That showed about a 10-year program. It was actually a 5-year capital improvement plan, but we showed a 10-year schedule. So that column, with a few additions in some locations where we've added, say, for example, in 2025, we're looking at Prospect Street. But in and around Prospect Street, the Moss area, the Short Street, some of the remaining portion of Prospect Street probably are due for either a mill and overlay or some additional work. What we're proposing is that potentially those streets will be added to that project in 2025. So we're not showing to do those until that time. So that brings us all the way down to 2028 is Lakeshore Drive. 2029 is actually one of the ones we'll talk about tonight, Lake Street from the Grove Street Bridge to CP Avenue. And that's shown on the map. That street is proposed to be reconstructed in 2029. That's 9 years out. Our typical maintenance program is, as we've discussed, is about a 7-year program. Similar to when we did a double chip seal on South Main Street about 10 years ago, to try and make it to the point where this reconstruction that occurred last year and this year, we're looking at a similar situation. We are not proposing to replace the water main at this time, even though it's 1920 to 1950 and has had some breaks. We understand that. We just talked about the cost, the water rate increase and the cost of municipal or the water main infrastructure replacement. The sewer main, while has not had any problems, in the long term potentially will need to be upsized in that area. It will be, not anytime soon, it will be the first area as further growth happens both north and south that comes down from the north side through North Main Street and from the south side through South Main Street. That's the first pipe that will become surcharged in the future. We are talking significantly in the future. We're not talking anytime soon.
And you're talking just this section of Lake
Just
Street?
in this section.
Taking care of all the rest of it to push it way out.
If you recall when we did Lake Street and we moved some of the flow from Water Street onto Lake Street, that project started at the bridge. And so this is the piece from the bridge east to CP Avenue. Again, it is fine, the size is fine now. It's just knowing that in some time in the future, this will be the first piece that's overloaded. That being said, what we're proposing in this maintenance plan is to do a mill and overlay on this block now, 9 years prior to before the reconstruction, in the anticipation that this heavily traveled roadway is not going to make it till 2029 for the total reconstruction without some maintenance. And so we're proposing to do that this year after July 4th, after the Main Street project is complete, so that it doesn't interfere with any alternative routes that local users are trying to avoid the South Main Street construction.
So this will be it until the reconstruction. You're hoping this mill and overlay will last until 2029.
Correct.
And that the whole road that's going to be rebuilt then? I thought we just rebuilt part of that.
No, this is from the bridge to CP Avenue
Yeah,
is the section I've been talking about.
yeah.
Now, there is another piece on East Lake Street from CP to Enterprise. That project is in that 7-year time frame. We are looking at a mill and overlay. The facilities under those are, if I recall right, are much newer, 2000 on the water main. The facilities are a little better, however, the road is, if you've driven it, is starting to wash, but is settling some.
But my question is, what are you going to do in 2029? I mean, draw the pencil, or just use it.
Just from
The whole-
CP Avenue to the bridge, Steve.
Oh, that's all you're going to do in 2029?
Correct.
Rebuild that? Oh, okay.
And of course, if the mill and overlay
Last.
lasts, maybe the 2029 moves to some future date.
All right,
Again, that's
sure,
9 years out.
right.
And so we will keep we will keep looking at that. As you know, the CIP, or the capital improvement plan, is always a dynamic document.
Oh, I'm sure people let you know that it's not working.
And of course, as we show this 10-year plan,
Yeah,
as we get closer to each year and we revisit the CIP next year, that list may change in order based on discussions that we have.
all right.
So the first highlighted yellow one we just talked about, we, in a sense, already kind of talked about another one of the Lake Street. The other portion of Lake Street will again continue doing the mill and overlay, but that street, at least the utilities are in pretty fair shape that are under it. Another street that we are looking to try and do again potentially after July, or toward the end of July, is Owen Street. That would be from Reed Street to County Trunk Highway V. A lot of heavy truck traffic through this area. The street is, if you notice, is a little rough to drive on. However, it's more in the joints than it is in the entire surface. So what we're looking to do is do some spot mill and overlay on each of the joints, mill and then overlay those patches, and then put a 2 or a 4-inch lift over the entire street in that area. Now, that area is a rural cross-section at this time, so we can raise the road surface without impacting the curb. Additional inches of asphalt will just provide more strength for the truck traffic that is on it. We are looking at potentially adding some curb in the area of the Reed Street and the curve area. We're still in discussions about exactly how far that any type of curb or rural section would extend to the north.
And you're looking at doing that relatively soon, and why? Why curb?
Oh, the curb, well, one of the reasons we're looking at the curb is the pond. It's located right at the curve. There is curbing that extends very close to, I believe it's between Reed Street and that curve. And so we've talked a little bit about whether we should put some beam guard up along the rural section in front of the pond, or should we just extend the curbing to provide that barrier.
All right, thanks.
So Owen Street, that leads us to Pleasant Street is the next one that's highlighted in yellow. Pleasant from Elm to West Madison. This is a small piece. It's very small, very short. It was on the list a number of years ago. We milled and overlaid Pleasant Street.
Can you just point quickly
Sure.
which one that is?
You got it?
Which
Pleasant.
one? Pleasant?
Okay, that one, yeah.
This one has a water main inside of a manhole. We postponed doing the remainder of it in that year with the anticipation that utility crews could get in and replace that at some point in the future. Our goal is to have that taken care of this summer and then mill and overlay the remainder of Pleasant Street. The next street on the list is Aronside Road. Aronside Road is between Griffith and
Dodge Court.
Dodge Court. This is a very small lane. I believe the right-of-way is 16 and a half feet wide. The proposal is to have the street department
Chains?
remove the asphalt, install the base course, and then have the asphalt bid put the asphalt back down. Possibly some small curb to help with the drainage. If you're familiar with the area, it's very steep there. We may use some valley gutter curb to dish that water to the south and then collect it with a small valley gutter down to Griffith Street. So in conjunction with the street department, it's a very narrow street. There's a number of homes on that street that actually front on Marguerite Street and then also have their driveways in the back on this small street. The next item on the list is Washington Street. This is Washington Street south of Giles. This was part of last year's program, but it was held off. because there was a sump pump issue in the area. That has since been remedied by the resident. And I think it, from what I understand and what I saw, it fared much better this winter. So we will look to have the street department come in, probably excavate that small 200-foot stretch, fix the street that was damaged over the years, and reconstruct that portion, work on some of the additional drainage for that area, work with the fish hatchery, and then overlay or place an asphalt on that short 200-foot stretch. That provides the description of the yellow highlighted in the spreadsheet. That estimate for that subtotal is about $415,000. Add to that the $25,000 from the chip seal. We're sitting at about an estimate of $440,000 of the $500,000 budget. Allows us about 17% for contingencies and or any other item or any other changes that you see we may want to change here tonight.
Would that same budget allow you to put in a little bit more sidewalk if you get more complaints, or is it completely a separate budget?
Currently, it's a completely separate budget. Steve?
We've used it for both.
Okay,
We just, there's some money left over there that, but there's street projects that might rise to the top, so we've kind of held off. We kind of have an idea of what street projects are there. So there are some parking lots that need to be done, several municipal parking lots that probably need some work. So we're kind of,
if you get water main breaks and you have to patch the street, does it come out of that budget?
Comes out of the water department pays for it.
Okay,
But if there are other spot repairs that the street department determines were not related to a utility issue, then those would be potentially here. In addition, I think we noted on the bottom of the list, there is a development agreement with the work that's being done on Tower Street. If there are some costs or if we look to, once that is complete, the portion of the development agreement, if it makes sense to mill and overlay that street at that time, it's another placeholder or another reason for a placeholder to kind of clean that area up once it's completed as part of the development. Again, we'll see that as the year progresses. So a number of items of why we kind of keep a little contingency. In the past, we've kind of looked at that in August again and reevaluated. Again, the spring can bring us surprises to this whole plan. One thing to note, we are 1 month ahead of schedule from last year and probably the last 4 years. We've bid the first week of May. Our openings were the first week of May for the last 4 years. If we stay on the schedule that we're proposing, we'll open bids approximately 1 month in advance of that. Unless there's a surprise.
and there are always surprises.
Any recommendations to add or subtract?
I just have a question about, on the spreadsheet, towards the bottom of number 2, part of CP 1 curve, I think is, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
On the spread, it's a 6 or 7 from the bottom. I think it's the first, it's one of the part of CP/Owen curve, the first one.
What is that description?
Yeah, and it's a number 2. It's got really high asphalt cost. It's 264 feet.
So let me explain the CP Avenue curve area.
Yeah.
Steve, if you could. So there has been a plan for a number of years
Which curve is it? Because there's 2 curves on CP Avenue, right?
point to the CP Avenue curve with the the intersection with Owen and C.
Oh, right here.
Oh, there's three curves then.
Yeah.
This is the new curve
Oh,
that
okay.
was in the transportation plan.
Okay.
And what the goal was
Changes
is
it from
instead
us.
of, when we make this G and A, one of the keys to making this a major through street was to take this intersection out and make that a curve.
Okay,
And then this would stop, there would be, this would pull in at a new angle to
Yeah.
the curve and, and so that work is out there. We did gather some additional right-of-way. We're probably gonna need some more yet. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure Vicky does, when Crystal Farms did a site plan about 10, 12 years ago, they pushed further to the southwest. And as part of that, they purchased more right-of-way to the south to give to the city to make up for what they pushed into the right-of-way. And that helps fix this curve. We still probably need at another 10, 15 feet at locations to be able to pull that curve around. But then that makes CP Owen Street from that curve on would actually become CP Avenue, and CP Avenue would become the second full through street north and south.
So the stop sign would disappear.
understood. And right now it's a PACER rating of 2?
So now I see what you were discussing. There is a piece of Owen Street between O'Neill and CP Avenue that has a rating of 2. It is not long.
Right.
It is alligatored. It will be gravel probably this spring. The
I
street
didn't-
department has done quite a bit of patching in that area. They will continue to do so. We did look at this area, and the question you brought up was, why is that cost $515,000? That's because we are putting those several pieces of street into one number. We did look at potentially doing this project as a standalone. However, when we saw the number was already approaching over 500,000, it meant that was the only project we were doing. In addition to then having to do, making sure that the property acquisition was in place, we decided to look elsewhere for our proposed streets.
Thank you. No further questions.
Vicky, you have any more questions?
No?
There's no prepared motion. You still want us to vote on this? It says recommendation.
Yes, we don't write a motion on these because you can change it any way you want.
It's true.
Oh, we can change any motion any way we want.
That's true,
Yeah.
but these are a lot more variable
Right.
than most motions. So we
This-
kind of just like, if you want to approve this one, just say, I move to approve. If you know,
And it's likely to change after we approve it.
that's very likely.
Right.
I mean, this is a concept that we're putting together, realizing that we're going to be as agile as possible going into the year.
So it's-
Motion to approve as presented.
Second?
Approve or recommend?
Recommend is.
Recommend approval.
Yeah,
Recommend approval as presented.
Second?
all right. We'll do a roll call vote then, Misty.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
All right, item 8, discussion recommendation on Jefferson Street reconstruction in TID 3. I drove on that street this morning, there's a pond.
There's always a pond at the corner there.
How old is this street? I know we talked about this years ago. Is it inherited from the township?
You know, I do not know. What I looked at is there are several major construction issues on the street. First of all, again, most of it is a rural cross-section. It handles really heavy traffic. Not car traffic, but truck traffic.
Right.
Last year, we recommended A1 and the school district to use this route because the road was already in such bad condition that we were going to rebuild it anyways. It's got some drainage issues. It's got some sidewalk issues. But one of the main things, and if you look at, and I'm going to change the page here. One of the main truck entrances for Chapter 2 is right there. So after discussions about the aggressive metals issue and being able to fund that, the planner laid out, how long we had and what kind of money we could borrow. The main funder of TID number 3 has been Chapter 2. So if we came in and rebuilt this street, it would be a substantial improvement to one of the main increment providers in the area. It would also make it a significant improvement for most of the high school kids going to school from the east side of the city. And it would also do a pretty significant improvement along CP Avenue. Now, Dwayne said, well, why don't we do CP Avenue North? I do not want to bite off that west half of CP Avenue because it doesn't have curb, and both the business right here on the corner and Chapter 2 use most of that for parking. So if you put in curb, you're going to substantially change both of those properties at this time. I would prefer to wait until we have a better option that we can look at for making changes on those properties. So Jefferson Street was my recommendation. We already had told everybody use this street because we're going to replace it. So TID dollars are a good option to replace it. It does fix the water main. Now, this water main is a 1960s water main. It's not the oldest water main in the city, but under standard replacement standards, it would be replaced.
Has it been breaking?
No, it hasn't been breaking. But the one that runs up Grove Street has been. So our debate and this water main is being paid for by TID dollars. So it was like, okay, we can replace a water main on schedule, actually, and not have to take it out of the utility fund. So it was from my standpoint, a win in all categories. I believe we are, but I can't tell you for sure.
So there's existing sidewalk on the east side of CP Avenue along this project?
Yes.
And this adds curb to the west side and the east side, or just the west side?
It just adds to the west side because the
East side has
there's
curb.
already curb on the east side. It's a
Right.
little rough. But I think that they are proposing to use the existing curb and just repair the pavement and add the curb on the one side. They're looking at bringing a sidewalk along the south side of the roadway.
And no sidewalk on the north.
No, because there are drainage issues and that stormwater detention basin issues and some parking lot issues further down the street. So at this point in time, we're just going to, take the easy way out and put sidewalk on one side. It ties, there is sidewalk on Grove, and there is sidewalk on the east side of CP Avenue, so it does make a connection across that area.
And the sidewalk is also paid by the TID money.
And the sidewalk is also paid by the TID. So, it gains a lot of benefit, using TID increment that's provided by Chapter 2 and provides a substantial improvement for them. I wish that we could do CP Avenue, but I don't think that dealing with those parking lot issues right now is in our best interest. This as designed should be a pretty simple project.
Probably the key will be coordination with the East Lake Street project we just talked about, as well as timing-wise will probably definitely be after July 4th, so Main Street will be completed.
What's Chapter 2 been doing to create an increment?
They've been growing.
They've been growing. They've added on 2 pretty good size additions.
And they just happen to be in a TID district.
Yeah.
Drainage, go ahead.
Remember, we talked about this 15 years ago, when we did the assessment on Grove Street.
Drainage, is there drainage issues here, and how's this, besides the puddle?
There are drainage issues at this current time. There is a ditch that runs along the old railroad bed that runs to the north into Rock Creek, which will probably have to be worked on again. I think we did that, what, in 2006?
Approximately, yes.
Yeah, and we haven't done it since, so we'll probably have to do some new work on that. The south side doesn't really, again, it's got the old railroad bed and some ditches there, it's pretty flat. The culvert goes underneath, but it tends to hold water. So I'm imagining that there will be some improvements to the culvert that goes under the road. And because we're doing curb, obviously, there'll be some storm inlets.
Right, and that was, I was going to ask, those are going to go to where basically the ditch is on the very left of this photo. Right there,
Yeah, that's the ditch right there.
that's where this
Yes.
stormwater will drain to.
There's ditches on each, this is the old railroad bed here where this dark spot is, that my finger's on. And there's ditches on each side of that railroad bed. And so they run that way. There's also a pond down here, so we might be able to run this one down this way, but I got a feeling that maybe this pond overflows and runs down towards.
I'm guessing that drains north, right?
Yep. I imagine that all of that drains north. But you can see that it's heavily overgrown, and so we'll have to clean the ditches.
Is that a city right-of-way, the old railroad bed, or the, you know?
To the north is not. All that has been bought up by property owners on the north side of the road. But there's still an easement for drainage. So that's not generally a big deal. If we were to, I think this is still held by either the DNR or the railroad, so I guess that would be an interesting conversation.
It's more important to have control to where the water is flowing out of rather than upstream.
Yeah, we did it, I know we went through there, and I remember Mark running the backhoe and the guys trimming all the brush out of there about 2006, 2007. But it's been a while. It needs it again. Probably, once this occurs, we'll probably make a few improvements to it so that it tends to stay flowing better.
Any more questions or concerns?
No. I recall walking on that street 40 years ago, so it's at least that old.
Yeah, it's probably seen a pretty good lifespan.
Recommend approval of Jefferson Street project for TID 3.
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote then. Misty?
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
Recommendations for future agendas. I just have a question. When does brush pickup start in April, just in case we don't meet in April?
April, middle of April.
Middle of April, when, so people can start 2 weeks before that?
You know, I've got to check, Todd. I don't remember the exact date, but we'll
There's-
get some information.
Yeah, there's an unofficial nod, wink, wink, that we can put stuff out 2 weeks ahead of time. 'Cause
That might be a little long.
Well, there's a grace period when you start finding people.
Brian's pretty tough.
You put me in a tough spot when you phrase your question as a statement, so I-
'Cause I'm sure there's gonna be a lot this year, because mine got buried in snow.
Yeah.
I got a couple of things. We're working, I think we mentioned we're working on the street permit. I don't know if we'll be ready with that by next month, but we'll be bringing that
For
to you.
contractors?
Yeah, lots of
Everybody.
things.
And
yeah.
anybody?
Quite encompassing.
Right.
And then we also hope to have at next meeting, an ordinance for you to review on small cell wireless antennas and other pole attachments, basically. Very quick, what's happening is some, the companies that are putting up small cells are doing it on power poles without permission, and we want to be ready for that.
Really?
And then keep in mind that May is our annual tour month. It's also the reorg meeting, so we typically plan to hit the road about 5:30 after you've done the reorganizational stuff.
Are you planning on getting a nice bus like you had last time?
Yes, ma'am,
Good.
absolutely.
I like that one.
Another thing we're planning on doing is holding informational tables at the voting this year. And one of the big things is to recruit board members
Oh,
From the city,
for the city.
not the township.
Right.
The city voting place.
The last Facebook posting attracted some interested township people, and
They want to be on the city boards, and some of them allow town people to be on them, like the library board.
yeah, but
Robin was-
someone
and this one.
beyond that, and I said, well, you just fill out an annexation form, and you can be on any city board you want, and town clerk shot that idea down.
One note, we'll probably bring our packet of bids. If all goes well, we'll have our
All right.
bids from last on the maintenance.
Okay, I don't have anything. Mark, Vicky? All right, I'll adjourn this meeting.